when we talked about that literally a year ago, like the videos we made talking about if Artemis was like grooming these young girls, like popped up on my on this day thing from a couple days ago that we were posting a year ago. So like a year ago we were reading Titan's Curse. But that is one of those things that we talked about then that I did want to talk about again. It's just the whole thing that it is a weird like kind of situation that it fits with Artemis's like girls or women or whatever. But I did like the way that Rick put it of she does have a very rigid way of looking at these things. And so she has a very rigid way of like believing or thinking of how these things work. Like the whole idea that the hunters have that like love is like something less than, it always bothers me, or that they see love as being something that's attached to like romance, not like anything else. But it is true that like Bianca doesn't have a parent around that, would pop up and be like, excuse me, what the fuck? And like Zoe obviously doesn't have one because Atlas is her dad and she's trying to run away from him before he kills her. And her whole family abandoned her after all the stuff with Heracles and her dad and everything. And so she doesn't have somebody, but there has to be like Thalia's mom is dead. So there is that at least when she joins the hunters, but there have to be hunters that joined without, especially because of the way Artemis puts it, like the way that she like gives like the pitch or whatever to Bianca in Titan's Curse. I liked how they showed that because it was a very manipulative way that they were introducing joining as like, oh, you just do this thing and then you can join and you get to like run free with me and you're invincible, so you don't have to worry about dying anymore. You get to like go on adventures with us and all this kind of stuff. And it makes it she joins because she doesn't really realize that what she's doing is like a permanent choice. And so it's one of those things that the gods don't really think about, like the other people in those people's lives, and how they would feel about that kind of thing. But it is like a thing, like there has to be some kids that join her because they are still kids. Most of them are like 10 to 12 or something, that join her. And then like, because they're now immortal, they don't really think about like they're normal people. Even Bianca was doing that kind of thing with Nico, and Percy was like bringing that up. Like, I remember how you have a brother and he's like back at camp wondering about you and doesn't know that you're like never ever coming back. And it's just, that is like a dynamic of that what if they never come back? Or the kids that do never come back, who do have people, there probably were people in like Thalia's life and all that kind of stuff that we're thinking of, that we're wondering like what happened to her besides like the demigods and stuff. That is like one of those things with Chiron, that he's the one that is like forced to do these very difficult things like that, where he would have to be the one to do that kind of thing. And that would be really hard to try to come up with a reason, like also to explain like what happened to them without so they wouldn't be worried about them, but also they wouldn't be able to like see them either, like almost like telling them like that they joined like a military academy or something is like the only thing I can think of he could say, which probably would be the kind of thing he would say. But it is like one of those things that the gods are just kind of making these decisions and doing these things and not thinking about the other people that whose lives they're affecting. And so like they're not, like Artemis isn't thinking about how now Chiron has to go and talk to like the family of these kids that just joined her and try to explain why they're never coming back and they can never see them again, but they're still alive, but they can never see them again, and they probably will forget that they're even there after a certain amount of time from being like immortal and just forgetting about normal human people and normal things like that. But and Artemis doesn't think about that kind of thing at all. She's just like, no, I'm just like saving these girls from the tragedy of like being around boys. Is basically how she puts it. And it's just a very like gendered thing. And it's just, and it also is just puts them in a very difficult place. And it does make me wonder if after all of this stuff happens with Zoe and Percy and everything, if they're able to, I don't remember, Well, I know that there are characters later on, like way later on, that do join the hunters eventually, but it does make me wonder if later on things with them also change the way that they do with the other gods after this book is over. But it's
Yeah.
just like Artemis is one of the nicer gods. Like people got upset when we talked when I said like I think she's like a turf last year, but she basically is with how she talks about like gender, like thinking that like a woman, like a man seeing her bathing naked is bad, but so she turns the man into a woman and somehow it's okay when it's a woman watching you bathe naked. And it's just like she is like a very gendered way of looking at things, but yeah, it's just one of those things that Artemis is one of the nicer gods. It's one of the ones that you want to like more. I do like her overall, like kind of what she stands for or whatever. I usually get her and Poseidon the most whenever I take like the like what cabin are you quizzes and stuff. But it is just one of those things that if you actually stop and think about like like the after effect of her making those choices, it would be really hard. Like if this actually did happen and there were like kids actually disappearing, how would people feel or like how would they react or like what would that be like?